Hello everyone, and welcome to the second ever Stately Office Hours. This time, as you can see, with beautiful video. And here with me today, we have David, the Stately founder and developer, and we have Matt, a developer, and me, I'm a developer and designer relations and the multitasking host for this live stream. How is this going to work? Right, you can ask us questions and give us feedback. We're going to have questions via Twitter on the hashtag Stately Office Hours. On the Discord, if you're a member of our Discord channel, I will just show you the link for that. If you want to go to Discord on our Office Hours channel in there, tweet using hashtag Stately Office Hours, or in the YouTube live comments. We can see your comments coming up here as well. And I'm hoping to try to pick these questions up and ask them to probably mostly to David and Matt, not me at this point, while I check what everyone else is saying as we go along. We are new to this, as you might be able to tell, so there may be a few hiccups, so please bear with us if there are. This video will be available later on YouTube, and then we will make sure that we have captions as well. Unfortunately, YouTube won't let us have captions until we have 1,000 subscribers. So that is an incentive to get 1,000 subscribers.
Yep,
and then we'll be able to have captions auto going as we speak.
Yeah.
So let us kick off. We have a couple of questions that we got already in our Discord channel. And so I will ask those first. Let's start with a nice, easy one. First off, this was from Mike C. Any plans on porting XState to Go or Rust?
Yeah, that's it's an interesting question because it shows that like one of our goals is to really like make XStates and state charts in general, not just JavaScript and TypeScript specific. So I've already started, I think about a year ago on, it's called XState Python. So basically we're porting XState over to Python and it's following the SCXML algorithm. And so that's working right now. It's not very well documented and there's still some stuff left to be done there. But I would say that anyone who wants to have a go at actually porting XState over to any language like Go or Rust or C# or Java was mentioned this morning too, take a look at the XState Python I'm trying to find the link here, but the XState Python implementation, because that's probably going to be the cleanest in terms of the actual algorithm. And I'm not sure how to share links here, but I'll just post it somewhere. But yeah, eventually we do want to get there, though. I think that is a goal, just supporting popular languages or mainstream, whatever you want to call it, and having it so that whatever machine configuration that you make, like with JavaScript or TypeScript, like that same machine configuration can be ported over to other languages, and you're going to be guaranteed to have the same state machine behavior from those things.
It's kind of exciting too that there's nothing JavaScript specific about state charts in general. Nothing at all. It's just all the algorithms are there, written in pseudocode in the SCXML spec, so you can just copy them and have a play with them and work on your own implementation. But yeah, the fact that we're even talking about this, we do have plans in the future for supporting other languages. But yeah. For now, we'll keep our focus on JavaScript and TypeScript.
Yep.
Fabulous. And another question that we already had in our Office Hours channel on Discord was from either Jan or Jan, so I apologize not knowing which way to pronounce your name. And that is, what are the various ways the community can contribute to the success of Stately? And they specifically said both long-term and short-term.
That's such a great question. I'll let Matt answer first, since he's been such a great contributor to XState and Stately even before he joined officially.
Well, this is my first week, so hopefully I've kept things up since I've actually joined. I mean, there's so much missing tooling, isn't there? I think this is the whole reason why Stately exists, is that state charts and tools go so well together. And if the fact that the inspector is doing so well, that the visualizer is doing so well, and people really love seeing their code visually. I would say if you think that there's something missing, contribute it. if you think that there is, like David, you've called me the missing parts of XState engineer before, and I love that title.
XState, the missing parts. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. The missing parts. So if there's something that doesn't exist, then try and build it, because all of this stuff is open source for you to have a play with. Other than that, we're going to be releasing stuff soon, right, David? And we're going to need beta testers. We're going to need people to contribute back to it. Some of the work we're doing is going to be open source too, so you'll be able to PR. And David can probably talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of areas of contribution. And so right now, like directly contributing to the code base, it's a little bit complicated. Like Matt was talking about the SCXML spec and algorithms. The truth is, like, if you wanted to make your own XState, you could just read the pseudocode algorithms in SCXML and do it yourself. But there's a reason that, you know, not everyone has done it, and that's because there's a lot of algorithms, and it's actually a lot more complicated even than I thought. Like even porting it to Python, it's not fully finished yet, and that's taken me weeks just to get the initial implementation and all the tests. Oh my gosh, there's like hundreds of tests that, you know, have to be passing in order for the, you know, algorithm to be sound. But documentation is always welcome. We've always we've also seen PRs come in for different, I guess you could call them adapters for XState. Like recently, XState Svelte, people have been contributing templates and also examples as well. So that's something new that, you know, I feel we should mention, is that we have an examples folder in the main XState repo. And right now it's full of templates and a couple of small examples. But what we're going to be doing is populating that with a whole bunch of examples that you could just fork and or like just put directly in Code Sandbox and play around with and get an idea of the different capabilities of XState. Matt has already started a bunch of these in XState catalog, so, you know, maybe we'll port a few of those over. And eventually something we're building is just like a registry of like just all of this application logic, anything you could think of in, you know, one convenient place where you could search for just the kind of logic that you need and be able to copy and paste it. Also, let's see, besides code, documentation, implementations, like the adapters for different things, examples, those are the big things that we definitely need. Also, as far as like feedback for us, I might as well mention this now. Another one of our coworkers, coworkers, Jenny, she created a survey, which I'm going to post the link at the end of this, you know, office hours, and hopefully you could fill it out. It's basically just a way for you to tell us how we can make XState better, what kind of tooling and services and just improvements you'd like to see. And the survey is completely anonymous, and unless you choose to share information, and all of the questions are also completely optional. So it's going to be by far the easiest survey you ever take. So please take it. Yeah.
Well, we've got a few questions coming up already in our live. So I am just going to go in the order in which they were asked. I think that's the fairest thing to do. So first off, we have Mark Chandler. Hi, Mark. And what are the primary benefits of SCXML compatibility?
So that's a really interesting question, because first of all, like, well, when I was first creating XState, having a spec really helped, because if I were to just design a state machine library with no spec, I'd be trying to add features left and right. And the more features you add, the more complex the library becomes. And then you have to write tests for all of them. And it's really not easy to port that to different languages. But while I was researching state charts, you know, many years ago, I also ran into SCXML, which was this formal spec that has also been implemented in a bunch of different languages. So one of the primary benefits of SCXML compatibility are literally just having that spec there, so that we have somewhere to reference. And if we have like a decision to make, or like, should we enable this behavior or not, the decision isn't up to us. It's up to the spec. We look at the spec, we say, okay, does this fit in with what the spec says? And if so, then, you know, we will implement it. If not, then we shouldn't. And so the spec has been like just sort of a really good guide for features and stuff like that. Also, the SCXML spec has provided a good set of constraints for future multi-language compatibility. So I feel like if we just did XState completely disregarding SCXML and made it all JavaScript specific, it would be really difficult, if not impossible, to support other languages in the future. And also visualization would be a lot harder because not everything is visualizable. Like even if you have a plain reducer with switch statements and if statements, like visualizing that into those boxes and arrows that cleanly describe your logic, that's really hard to do. You have to like break it down into an AST tree, basically stuff that Matt probably knows how to do, but I have no idea how to do. So yeah. But also SCXML provides a suite of tests, like hundreds of different tests of edge cases that I haven't even thought of before. And so it's a lot better to like just have these tests existing than, accidentally discover them yourself or have to write all of them. So yeah, it's basically a guide for us.
I noticed a comment too from Jotso, I think Johannes, who's been very active in the Discord recently, about whether you can share test cases between different language implementations. And that's exactly what SCXML gives us too. That's like, it has a spec of huge amounts of test cases, which are in the XState repo as well, which we've just implemented in JavaScript and TypeScript, and we test XState using it. So yeah, all the things that David said and more.
Right, and we were also able to bring it into XState Python. So right now, a few dozen test cases are enabled in Python, and so the goal is to enable all of them. And also, like moving from version 4 to version 5, having those test cases are really important too, because we don't want to break behavior or anything like that. So yeah.
Fabulous. So KDs says, is it too early to ask what kind of services and or products will Stately be looking to offer?
I think this is an excellent question, an exciting question. So let's talk about what immediately is coming out, or by immediately, I mean within the next 2 weeks or so. We're currently working on updating the visualizer and by extension, the inspector at the same time. So I released the inspector a little bit less than a year ago, and I know that not everyone might be aware of it. I think more people are aware of the visualizer, but currently the visualizer is in an old state. It's in an old version of XState and an old version of React too. And I've been so far removed from updating it that I have no idea how it even deploys or anything. Like it's a bit of a mess. And so it's not really worth the effort to update it. So we took a lot of feedback from people using the inspector and also feedback from people who have used the visualizer. And we are going to be releasing basically a combo visualizer inspector. It's going to serve as the updated visualizer with the latest version of XState, a lot better graph routing and visuals. You could zoom in and out and pan and everything. A lot more features. And yeah, well, what features are we actually adding? I should know this.
I think the biggest one we're adding is TypeScript support.
Oh yeah, of course.
So you can use TypeScript just directly inside the visualizer. You can. We're going to do as much work as we can to make sure that you can just copy and paste your code from your app and just visualize it there.
Right. And one of the solutions to that that the inspector provided was the fact that you could inspect and visualize your state machines from running code, like in your actual application, in the comfort of your own editor, if you don't want to deal with that tiny editor in the visualizer. By the way, we have resize handles now, so you can make it as wide as you want. But that's why the visualizer is also going to act as an inspector. So you could just set the URL in XState inspects to be the visualizer instead of the inspector, and it's just going to work exactly the same way. Furthermore, this is also going to be completely open source, which means if you want to self-host the visualizer or use it internally or locally, I know a lot of people have been asking for this, that's definitely going to be an option. In turn, we please ask you, contribute back. If you see a bug or see anywhere that needs improvements, please contribute back. It's a Create React app written in TypeScript, so hopefully that should be familiar to a lot of you and able, for contributions, stuff like that. Another thing too. So with the visualizer, another thing that we're going to be starting is a registry. And so I talked about this briefly before, but the registry is going to be a way for you to save and share machines. So right now, whatever you create in the visualizer, previously was being saved in Gist, which that wasn't really the best solution. Now we're going to have our own registry where these machines can be saved, and you could share them via URL and visualize them and fork them and create your own machines and things like that. So that's going to be parts of another one of the big services that we're going to be releasing. Of course, that's also going to be completely free, but eventually we're going to have options for if you want private machines or teams or things that are created from the editor, which that's also like number 3, but that's still a couple months away. We are also working on a visual editor so that if you don't want to code your state machines and state charts, you could drag and drop and just drag all of the events and states around and visually create them. This has also been something that a lot of people have been asking for. So those are the 3 main things we're working on, but that's like the tip of the iceberg. We have honestly way too many ideas for what we want to create, but they all are under the scope of a common goal, which is making application logic more accessible and also quicker to write and create. So by more accessible, I mean, can you share this logic with not only other developers, but designers, project managers, etc., and have them able to provide feedback and understand all the features that are happening in your app. And the quicker part is, can we make it easier to create this application logic, without developers either having to do it from scratch or having to search for an NPM package that might or might not fit their use case. Like, we really want to solve those big problems and just, transform the way we develop software.
I noticed as well,
so
Mark,
if anyone does have
sorry, Laura, I jump in. I just noticed Mark is asking, are you all using a component library to build this? Mark is one of the key contributors to Chakra UI. It's my first time using Chakra UI. We're using the hell out of it. It's incredibly good.
Yeah.
So yes, we are, Mark.
Chakra is really nice. We've been enjoying using it.
And I was going to say that if anyone does have any feedback on how we might be able to help them in their organizations with how they manage to do the collaboration or the communication side of it, or how they use XState tool, we always want to know, especially in our Discord is probably the best place to discuss it, where there's a lot of cool people hanging out as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think we probably covered Mark's question that he asked, but thank you for asking that. Now I'm trying to scroll past and find it. About how the role and API of the inspector will change with the role with the work that Stately is doing. I think we have covered that. So let us go with Aris's question. I'd really like to use the visualizer with XState running in mobile environments such as React Native or Ionic capacitor, but so far without any success. Any tips on how to get it working?
Sure. So this is something that we really need to work on our end. Currently, there is experimental support for WebSockets, and you can use the inspector in a WebSocket way. However, it's not well documented, again, because it's experimental, and I want to avoid writing documentation for things that are definitely going to change. But as we're working on the visualizer, that's something that we're definitely going to be taking a look at. Probably not immediately, but soon, just because a lot of people have been asking for this. But we're going to work on enabling WebSockets to be used for connecting to the visualizer. And this will enable things such as, you said, React Native, Ionic capacitor, but also server-side applications that are using XState on the server. So, yeah.
Another thing, too, is that we're probably in the next few months or so, we'll start work on a VS Code extension, too.
Yeah.
So having the visualizer inside VS Code is something that we all know has immense value and is very, very exciting. And this may even be higher priority than doing the server-side stuff, because when you can see it in your IDE and play around with it, it gives you a lot that you would also get from the inspector too. But yeah, everyone wants the VS Code thing, so we're keen to make it happen.
Right.
Is there anyone that doesn't use VS Code nowadays? I think you would have to really be the outlier.
Right. That is true.
Henri has a question. Do you have plans to have better TypeScript support with XState, either in the form of code generation or something else?
Yes, absolutely. It's one of the primary challenges, really. TypeScript is very, very good for most code and most types of code. It gets really complicated with XState. It has a couple of weaknesses that we have to work around, and we're trying to maintain a consistent API while also kind of experimenting around the edges with what TypeScript can do with just pure TypeScript. So a new effort that David especially has been pushing is the create model syntax, which is you can import it from xstate/lib/model, and it does a better job than we're used to of kind of providing generics for TypeScript, and it allows us to do a bit more complex work in terms and complex inference with TypeScript. What that means is that we can potentially, there's sort of several prongs that we can attack it with in the future. Code generation is one of them. So a library that I made is called XState CodeGen, which scans your files and produces beautiful type definitions for them. So you get you could kind of type safe access to your machines and machine options and things. Create model is one of them. And in the future, when we think about the editor, let's imagine that there's a flow where you create a visual model of your application or of your state chart, and then you can extract out of that some perfect type definitions and print it into your code base. There's another potential flow there that we could think about with TypeScript. But yeah, it's very, very much on our radar, and it's a challenge that we definitely need to work around in the future, but we're committed to it.
Yep. So yeah, just expanding on create model, that is completely optional for you to use, but there's a lot of really good TypeScript improvements coming in there as well. We also have people contributing some really, I want to call it magical just because I have no idea how it works, but some really awesome TypeScript improvements too, but that is definitely going to be one of our biggest priorities. Also in version 5, that's going to be a huge focus as well. And we have the ability to have stronger types in there just because, when you have a major version, you're allowed, I want to say allowed to break certain things. And so we could deprecate things that were sort of holding us back in terms of getting a full strongly typed support. So we do know it's important, and it is coming. But XState has been probably one of the most difficult things, at least for me, to type.
By far.
Yeah.
Here's a question to put you on the spot, David. How has the experience of having a team working on this with you now been so far? And careful, because we're in the room. Yeah,
no. Honestly, two things. First of all, before I started Stately and everything, I was really just thinking of ideas for like how I can, do this on my own, like keep doing it on nights and weekends, which it was draining me just because I had a lot of Microsoft work. And so finding the energy to do that like after work was really hard. So like I was thinking about like, oh, maybe I could write a book and release it and then just do it myself. But I quickly learned two things. First of all, doing it on the side for a project that, a lot of you all are using, it's not giving the project justice. And so it's better that I do it full time. And also me doing it full time, like just me alone, is not nearly enough. And so that's why I'm honestly super, super thankful that I basically have a dream team of people working on this, including Matt and Laura and people not in the chat, which Farzad Matthias has been working on XState for many years now, and a couple of other people, Jenny and Ari, both of them are more on the business side, and they are doing things where even if I had 100 hours in the day, I would not be able to do all of that stuff. But also the fact that we're moving this from it's not just my project. It's really a community project. And also going back to the SCXML question, that's why it's having that spec is good, but also having feedback from the community is good, because these aren't just my ideas. In fact, none of these are my ideas. These are ideas that are decades old and just really good ideas for everyone, to improve the way they create application logic. So having a team has been super, super awesome. And I can't imagine doing this, without this dream team. So.
So I'm just scrolling through to find, because Mark did also ask, where is Matthias, where is Anders today? Will he ever be on the office hours? And yes, we're going to see who we can get every week. Everyone is welcome. Everyone is allowed. It's just sometimes difficult for people's schedules to get everyone in at once. You don't want us all talking over each other anyway.
Right. So you're seeing about half the team here right now, and hopefully in the future, maybe we might expand the team. But yeah. But as far as finding Anders, just walk around in GitHub and you'll run into him. He's everywhere.
He's in your node modules right now, actually.
He is.
Just hiding there. Yeah.
So we got a question from Hader. Is it possible to use the visualizer to create/run test cases visually?
I'm going to make a note of that, because that's actually a really good idea. So one thing that the inspector does just related to that is it automatically generates sequence diagrams. And this is the old inspector, not the new visualizer yet, although that feature might be coming soon. And so these sequence diagrams are really helpful in, they're essentially test cases. You're asserting that when this sequence of events happen, you end up in the correct state. So it should be very possible to just, let's say you're visualizing a machine, you click certain events and you verify, okay, that's the state I want it to be in. And then you have a panel that just says all right, here's your test case, copy and paste it and, use it in your real world application. So long story short, this is possible, but it's not implemented yet. But I'm going to find a way to copy paste this so that I could just save it somewhere. It's a really good idea.
It's funny how state charts kind of prompt a lot of these types of ideas. I've been thinking more sort of philosophically about state charts, about how they're kind of an amazing abstraction for describing application logic in general, obviously, but also describing what an application should do from a high level. It's amazing to be able to think about, okay, let's say you've got a logged in and a logged out state. When you're in the logged in state, you can access these pages and do this and that kind of thing. And when you start thinking about that, you think, okay, maybe I could plan my whole app, the whole behavior of my app in a state chart from the beginning, and thinking about the paths through that, which are my most important paths, which are the ones that I need to make sure are working. And all of that is part of the visual domain, And once you start thinking about those ideas, all of these tools and implementations sort of just come naturally from that. How does that interface with design? How does that interface with accessibility and voice control and all of these really cool ideas? How does that with end-to-end testing? And there are so many possibilities. And so I do think that the ability to select paths through a state chart and prioritize those, document those, for instance, is really, really interesting beyond kind of the specifics of the visualizer and that kind of thing.
Right. And also, I want to quickly mention XState test. That's something that I will eventually be planning on making improvements on. I've had meetings with a bunch of people using it, and also people who have found it either a little bit too confusing to use or One of the things that I spoke about as a major benefits to XState test was actually not a benefit, which is I used to advertise like, oh, hey, XState test can generate hundreds and hundreds of tests. But developers were like, yeah, that means my CI runs for hours. That's not good. So, that's something that I definitely want to improve in XState test, like being able to specify specific scenarios instead of every possible scenario, but also having the option to comprehensively, test your entire system. So that's related.
Cool. I think this would be a good point to remind everyone about the survey now that I have got the link that I can put on the screen for everyone, because we do want to hear about how people are currently using XState and how you want to use it in the future. So all of your feedback would be really, really useful for that.
I'll also try to post it in the YouTube chat as well.
Yes, so it's a clickable link. That would be useful.
Yeah.
That is the one downside of this particular interface.
Yeah, I can't copy and paste.
Yeah, that is, and that is one complicated URL there.
If you're in the Office channels Discord, I have to copy and paste it first. But yeah, if you are there, then I will post a survey link there as well. Also, something that I should mention about the survey, it's completely anonymous, but if you want us to contact you and just talk a little bit more about how you're using XState, there is the option to get some limited edition stickers. So yeah, we've been sending them to sponsors, and I have a few extras, so I would love to be able to talk to you and send you these nice holographic XState stickers. So please fill out the survey.
Does it count if I fill out the survey? Because I really want those stickers.
Yes.
They are very shiny.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any other questions? I think I've managed to pick up all of the ones that we've had so far. If you want to ask in the YouTube comments or on hashtag Stately Office Hours on Twitter or in the Office Hours channel on Discord, we can pick up all of your questions in there. Otherwise, do either of you have anything in particular that you want to share that you haven't mentioned yet?
I do have. There's a comment from Jan Munchke about using XState in a router, which I think is something really interesting to pick up, which is the bottom chat message, except for two. It's after using XState for a more complex app, it's hard to go back to apps that use routers as the entry point. Routers feel so flimsy in comparison to state charts. Yes. Well, David, what do you think about this stuff?
So I think that's really valid, especially a lot of router. I think router is a British pronunciation. I'm not sure.
You're outnumbered in this chat, pal, so it's router.
I know, router. But yeah, a lot of the implementations in the wild are basically just you could go to any link at any time, which sort of reminds you of the things that state charts try to solve, where you can't just change the state at any time, especially for things like wizard forms and guided flows and things like that. You want a specific order sometimes, but at the same time, you want links where you could really go at any time. But also, there are concerns around if you go to a link /admin, you need to be logged in as an admin in order to go there. Otherwise, it redirects you. And honestly, when you think about this really sounds like, the concept of guards and guarded transitions and state charts and all of that. There have been previous experiments, even before I started on XState, or even before I was a developer, with Ember, where people have made state chart router implementations. Also, Angular's UI router, way back when, sort of felt like a similar thing where you have this big configuration object of routes. So it's something that we are thinking about, and two big things that we really want to work on this year, hopefully, are a form library and a router library for XState. And so we think that one of the biggest differences is we're not going to have an opinionated black box where it's okay, here is the forms you could use, and if you want to customize behavior, you could toggle feature flags on and off. Instead, it's going to be like, here's all of the Lego bricks that you could use to create forms of any complexity, and you could create wizard forms and routers and stuff like that. That's the kind of library that we want to provide. And so those are two things that we're thinking of.
Like this, the quick question from Mark. Does David make as many state machine puns in private as he does in public?
He's a horrible person in private, actually. He's really, like, puns are off the menu, obviously. He's a hard taskmaster, you know? So, no. Never even seen him smile in private. It's great to actually.
I think I'm just too busy to make puns in private, but I will ramp up the pun usage.
And here's a proper question here from Santi. How do you see the future of XState catalog? I guess, Matt, we ask you that one.
I think so. I wanted to actually come back to, this is related, but I wanted to come back to something that we're releasing with the visualizer, which is the registry. So the registry being somewhere that when you save a machine in the visualizer, you can have it saved to like your user profile. Essentially. So the registry, what it is you log in and you can see a list of all the state machines that people have created with the visualizer, sorted by popularity. So if you want to find like a text input or something like that, you can like just search text input machines. And what this means is it gives like it's like the XState catalog, but on steroids. It's outsourced to the people. And so if you see a machine that you use and that you like, then you can like it, give it a GitHub star basically, and that will move it up the pecking order in terms of popularity. So kind of XState catalog as it is now, it's a curated set of machines essentially by me, right? It's kind of like my state machine blog, And I think this is something that we will continue, definitely, because having kind of the stately official machines is, I think, a really powerful learning tool. And but yeah, for now, what I'm most excited about is the registry and about sort of people building up their own machines themselves.
Mm-hmm. And going to an even earlier question, like one of the future ideas of the registry is the fact that, we can make it language agnostic. So it's like if you have an authentication flow, you want to use it in a Node.js app, but also someone is like, wow, this is a great authentication flow. I also want to use it in my Python app. They should be able to, with very minimal changes, like just changes to the actual implementation of certain actions or services. So that's part of the future. But XState Catalog is a really good curated set of machines. And I think that we also want to use it for like just tutorials and education as well, and have that be the primary source instead of, hey, here's thousands of machines, you could search through it and figure things out. But what Matt has provided is a little different in that it actually has a description of how the machines work and how you design the machines, which that has been a good big question too. Like, we're providing you all of the tools to create your own state machines and state charts, but actually modeling them, that's an art form. And that's something that requires practice and guidance as well. And so we need to do better with that.
Yeah, for sure. This kind of links on to...
absolutely... Oh, you go, Matt.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to actually turn the tables on you a bit, Laura, if that's all right, which is there's a question that you are super qualified to answer here, which is Santi has asked another question 2 messages down, which is, are you planning to rebuild the documentation soon?
I'll show Santi's question on the screen.
Sounds good. And yeah, Laura, you've been doing a ton of work to do with this, right?
Yes, so we are planning on rebuilding the documentation, not in a complete overhaul way. We're going to do it slowly, bit by bit, so that nothing gets lost, and so that we keep everything that you already like about it. And we're just going to try to restructure it in a way that makes it easier to find what you're looking for and easier to learn if you are a newer person starting out with XState. So for example, I'm a developer who is very new to XState, and so I've been looking at the ways in which it make it easier for me to learn how to use it. And so the aim is that we can integrate all of that back into the documentation so that it is equally useful for all of you incredibly clever and experienced developers out there as it is for the people who are much newer. And if you do have any questions about the documentation, suggestions, things that you would look for in the documentation that might not already be there, it would be really useful if you could let us know, because that would help us actually get that in the documentation for you.
Either in the survey or the Discord, or wherever else you could share it with us. But yeah, one common thing that people have been talking about in the documentation, no matter how good of a developer they are, they're like, once you understand the mental model of state machines and state charts, the docs are a great reference. However, the docs are not very good at providing that that mental model. So that's what Laura's going to help a lot with. I think we've internally dubbed it like the no-code approach to XStates, like just understanding things visually and in a way that could be described without having to dive into the implementation, so that you understand the why and the how of everything before you start writing code. And that's an important part of software modeling too, because we're not starting with code, we're starting with pencil and paper or whatever your tools of choice are for designing your application logic, and then using XState.
Exactly.
And it should helpfully...
Sorry, Laura, I keep stepping on you.
You're right. It's just the streams, though. I think the way that they're pulling us in together. I think it will make it much easier as well to have people on cross-disciplinary teams working together. So if you want to collaborate with a designer, if you want to be able to bring other members of your team on to use these tools so that you can all work together, it should hopefully make it easier for people that don't necessarily have as much code experience to join in as well.
It should work on the boxes and arrows level, and it should work on the implementation level.
Yep.
Absolutely. So someone, Hader again, has said, I would also suggest creating a state chart optimizer / analyzer for XState. Any thoughts on that?
Want to take that, Matt?
Well, our website is stately.ai. So we're going to make that AI do some work, right?
Eventually, yeah.
Eventually, yeah. Yes, this is well, obviously David comes from Microsoft, and so David's great dream is to create a Clippy for XState, basically to say, you appear to be making a fetch machine. Would you like to add a local cache or something? And totally. So it's really on our radar. Like, however complex a graph is, it's always traversable, it's always analyzable, and I think it's going to be really fascinating to kind of like there are so many things actually in web development, especially, that can be modeled in similar ways. A mutation is very similar to a fetch. All list pages in general sort of model the same way. And so when you're adding features, it feels like, especially a registry of state charts and a whole ton of things that people have built for themselves, that could be a great corpus for an AI to target, to learn more about what people are doing and using. And especially since you could sort of give them semantic names as well, it's a lot more meaningful as a unit of logic than other types of code. That makes sense. A reducer, it's pretty hard to tell what's going on, whereas in a state chart, everything is labeled, everything makes sense, and you have a lot of natural language in there that it's easy to parse. And so, yeah, I think it's an incredibly fruitful avenue to pursue.
Yeah. One way to think about it, and this is a common analogy I give, is sort of like Google Maps. Like, if you want to get from point A to point B, Google Maps will tell you like exactly how to go there, just because streets and roads and intersections and highways, they all work basically the same way in every country. So that if you want to get to somewhere in a completely foreign country, it's going to be the same thing. You open Google Maps, it shows you exactly where to go. So having that registry full of like these Google Maps of just different machines, like that's going to be really helpful in I think that Matt correctly pointed out that we don't want XState to just be a tool for like, oh, hey, yeah, here, create your application logic. Here's the tools for you to do so. But we also want it to help you create your application logic. And there's many reasons for this. We want to prevent bugs. We want you to do it in the most optimal way. And we could also suggest things that you might have forgotten in your application logic. Like, for example, if you're creating a authentication flow, like with a username and password and everything, you might have forgot to add validation, or you might want to add a forgot password flow. And so that alone is its own separate state machine that you should be able to just copy paste in. So that's where the registry is going to be really helpful. And having things described in the state chart is definitely a lot easier than having to parse many reducers, where that kind of information is not easily extracted from reducers, or worse, like other functions that aren't exactly in reducers, because I know not everyone uses Redux, NGRX, Vuex. But as far as optimization and analysis, that's also something we want to work on in the future. Like just even things like where we could tell you, hey, this state has no incoming transitions or no outgoing transitions. We should warn you about that. Or maybe you misspelled the state here. Things that we can't or are impossible to check in compile time, like in TypeScript, we should be able to inform you in runtime, like in a dev mode setting. So yeah.
In VS Code XState, for instance, as well. So
yeah.
A VS Code extension that could target this would be amazing. You forgot to add error checking onto your invoked service. What are you doing?
Yeah, exactly.
All that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I think this question we're probably going to end up answering every office hours. Pedro asks, are you hiring?
Yeah, so I sort of want to rope this question into, there was a previous comment on like just, KDS said, sounds great, want you folks to get paid so you could keep doing OSS. And so someone else was mentioning like the whole getting paid for OSS. It's definitely a tricky problem to solve. And, long story short, like we are planning on doing things that a lot of developers have been asking for. Some of those things will be free. Some of those things will be paid. And that's just because it's going to cost us money to do it. And so, like if we could offer like paid services on top of like all of the open source stuff, then that's going to help self-sustain and support that open source stuff that we're working on. Right now, we are not hiring. I think we have a full team for now, but I think we're definitely going to be hiring in the future. So probably, 2022. So not anytime soon. But, yeah, don't know what more to say there. But like, definitely keep us on your list of dream companies to work for, hopefully. And this company is completely brand new. So we are shaping this company to be, what I feel like is, one of the best places to work for. Not like in a Google sense of having like catering and everything. Like we are all completely distributed, completely remote, and also have an emphasis on, diversity and inclusion in our values. So, but yeah, keep us in mind.
We have a couple of questions here asking about X actor or actor model and any ETAs for what we're working on there.
Yeah, so XState version 5, that is definitely an ongoing project, and it's something that it's not our, I mean, it is one of our primary focuses, but we really need to, release like the visualizer and the registry and all of that. At the same time, we are working on XState version 5 in parallel. And so XState version 5 is not a complete break from XState version 4. The API is going to be really similar. And that's why any changes in XState version 4, we also test in XState version 5 and make sure that it's going to be compatible with that. There are a few big ticket items that we still need to finish in XState version 5 before we release an alpha. One of them is, of course, improved TypeScript support. The other one is the refactored notion of like actors and services and things like that. And I think like once those and a couple of other things are in, we could start releasing alphas with the understanding that those alphas are going to change. And so if you rely on the alphas, they might break things. So hopefully we could do that soon, probably like within the next couple months or so. And also there was a mention of X actor. So that is still something that I'm experimenting with, and I'm still trying to decide the things that are in XActor, do we pull it into XState, or do we make XActor a dependency of XState? And for those who don't know, XActor is basically XStates the actor model parts. So it completely removes any of the state machine and state chart stuff. Not saying that those aren't good, but like it provides that base so that we have that actor model layer in which XState can build on top of. So no ETA for that yet. I mean, that's already out there, but it still needs to have documentation and all of that. But our primary focus is on XState version 5 for now.
Fabulous. And I love this question as a way to start getting us towards wrapping up. Is there anything in the ecosystem around XState that you're excited about, as in like non-stately things? It's another question from Mark.
I'm really excited. I've got a couple of things I'm particularly excited about. There is a new DSL for XState called LucyLang that I'm really, really excited about. It's basically it's a bespoke language for XState or for state machines. And the guy's been working on it. Matthew has the thing I'm especially excited about is it's going to have absolutely killer TypeScript support. TypeScript support is going to be amazing because you can basically, the way Lucy is going to work is it's written in C, and you can target it's like a CLI written in C, and you can target a LucyLang file, and it will print out XState declarations from this kind of thing that you write, and it will also print out TypeScript declarations too, with like perfect kind of. It really tickles me because it's kind of like XState Cogen was. You get perfect event types for your actions and things and services, and everything's just perfectly type safe. So that's something that's really, really intriguing me. Yeah, David, you got any?
I mean, all I could think of are stately things right now. But a lot of people are contributing things to XState. Something recently that I saw. So I gave a front-end master's workshop last year on XState with React. And the workshop, by the way, the actual workshop material is available online. It's open source for free. So you could just go on GitHub and look for that. And someone, I forgot her name, but she actually converted that workshop to Svelte. So it just goes to show, how easy it is to, just use XState in many different environments. So just things like that really excite me. Just seeing people make, first of all, really cool things with XState, and number two, just really useful tools for the frameworks that they're using. So just that open source collaboration is great. And I don't want to say like that's non-stately because open source is a core part of what we do. But yeah, it is exciting to see nonetheless.
There was one more thing I had in my mind as well, which was actually quite facetious from Mark, because this is something that Mark's doing, which is bringing XState more visibly into open source libraries. So for instance, Chakra is, I'm not sure whether this is sort of public thought or whether this is something that that they're going to put in their documentation, but I know, for instance, that Eric Clements at AWS at Amplify are thinking about doing basically open sourcing the XState machine that drives their authentication work. And so in the documentation, they would have basically, here is how AWS Cognito kind of authenticates for you. And you can just pick out that machine and put it in your front end. So it's kind of like headless logic, basically. And it's using XState in a way that is really exciting, which is basically as a unit of logic that you can just document, have visually documentable in your documentation, similar to XState catalog, and then you just pull it into your app and use it with XState. So I know Chakra is doing that, AWS Amplify doing that. I'd love to see more folks doing that too.
Yeah, and of course, one of the other biggest things is the articles and presentations that people are doing on XState. I am keeping a list of them on the resources page of the documentation, which I will post a link to in the YouTube chat. So yeah, there's just been over 100 like just different talks and podcasts and articles written on that. And so it's always exciting to see more people talking about XState.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really great to learn how people talk about it as well, and how people communicate the different concepts around state machines and state charts. That's something I've been learning a lot from reading those articles and watching those talks lately as well.
It's awesome.
I think, unless we have got any more questions, I think we're good for rounding up to about an hour at this point. So I'm going to really labour the point and just push the survey yet again, because we really, really, really want your feedback. And I'm assuming there are a few people watching now who weren't watching earlier. And now there should be a clickable link somewhere in the YouTube comments, and we will tweet a link out to it later. And it's already there in the Discord as well.
Totally. You need to tell us what to build, please. We don't know what to build. We've got no ideas. We need everyone to give us ideas.
Or
rather,
too many ideas.
Yeah, we have too many ideas. But I think the next 3 things that we're building are going to be like really huge. Not bundle size huge, but just like improvements huge. Mark asked stately conf when, and so let's just earmark that for after we're actually able to self-sustain, and sell stuff.
Yeah, and perhaps when it's a little easier to be having a conference as well.
Oh, of course. So 2022, we'll see.
See you all in Florida.
Yeah. It's about as hot here as it is there. So
yeah, you can tell in this room it's absolutely boiling right now. So I think with that, we will wrap up. Thank you everyone for joining in and for all your questions and hilarious comments as well. We've been reading all of them as well as the questions, keeping us entertained. And we will be back again the same time next week. So please keep coming. Please keep giving us your feedback, and we look forward to speaking to you again. Right, well, see you later, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
See you guys. Bye.